Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th?
If we did need it, there is a lot more evidence, but he's not wrong there. And it's kind of weird. He said a bunch of things and they weren't terrible. They were definitely opportunistic, and we'll talk about that. There's definitely some ambition here. There's some plans here from California Governor Gavin Newsom, but his attacks against Donald Trump in this statewide and national address yesterday, not super inaccurate. And I have a lot of thoughts, but let's jump into a bit more of his commentary.
Thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active US Marines. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past.
That was pretty aggressive out of Gavin Newsom. For Gavin Newsom, I mean, for the guy who I criticized yesterday in the show as saying that Trump was taking steps in the direction of authoritarianism, which is like, come on, dude. Those steps are like 8 years ago. He said he was basically holding a big boy birthday party like other failed dictators. That was pretty strong out of Gavin Newsom, and I don't like praising Gavin Newsom. I don't like doing it 2 days in a row. But let me just tell you, behind the scenes, this is me being totally honest. I think I walked my dogs or something, and I come back to my house, and my wife has Spectrum News on or whatever. That's what we watch here because they interrupted, I think, a Sparks game. And so I see that Gavin Newsom's about to give an address on the situation in California. I'm gonna keep it totally real. I was like, oh no, this is gonna be him trying to placate Trump. He's gonna slam the protesters. He's gonna capitulate. That is 100% what I expected, and I was wrong. I mean, like he does say, don't break the law, stay peaceful and everything, which is fine. But that was really the extent of it. He did about as little of that as you can expect in an address like this. The rest of it was slamming Donald Trump and being, I think, very honest about why Donald Trump is doing what he's doing. And it's super important that people know the actual situation on the ground in LA, the actual timeline of what happened and why things are the way they are, who actually instigated and inspired the violence, and where we go from here. Now, that doesn't mean that Gavin Newsom is only doing this because he cares so much about democracy or whatever. Look, this is a guy who is thinking minimum 16 hours a day about 2028 and what he's gonna do to position himself for that. But that said, if we take as a given that Gavin Newsom is always posturing for 2028, I prefer this Gavin Newsom to the having a nice like sit down with Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk Gavin Newsom. I think this is a little bit better. I would also say though, like if this is what Gavin Newsom actually thinks, why a month or two ago did you think it was totally cool and productive to sit down with Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk? Like, did you think, you thought we could work with them? They're serious people. Like, Charlie Kirk, to be clear, we're not gonna do like a whole segment on him because I generally don't care that much about what he thinks about anything. He did a show yesterday where he, from some white nationalist website or whatever, he had a chart of the percentage of LA's population that's white and how it's been going down over the decades. And he just presented that as, this is a crisis. There's not enough white people here. So that's who he was sitting down with. So that's worse Gavin Newsom. Now we have just ambitious Gavin Newsom, but I like it, especially as today we expect that the Marines are gonna be deployed, and fingers crossed nobody gets murdered as a result of that. I like having at least somebody coming out and being strong, even if not for necessarily the same reasons that I would say the exact same things. And I like the line, by the way, the weakness masquerading as strength. I think it's totally true. He's not the first person to mention it, but we have to constantly point out that that's what all of this is from Donald Trump. When they say alpha, when they say macho, all those things, it's not actual strength. If it was strength, we'd just say strength. It's posturing, it's posing, it's hiding, and it's just cowering behind. You send in the Marines or whatever, they're tough. You're not tough just because you send other men out there to potentially murder peaceful protesters. So let's just be very clear about that. Now, again, Donald Trump is continuing to try to set the narrative for this thing, true social bleeding. If our troops didn't go into LA, it would be burning to the ground right now. Just like so much of their housing burned to the ground. He keeps saying the same point. The great people of LA are very lucky that I made the decision to go in and help. Now, of course, he hasn't talked to a single person in LA to make that decision. He's just saying they're lucky. They're not happy about it. They don't like this, and we'll get to the polling or whatever, but they're very lucky. Because if not for his soldiers, then all of LA would be on fire. I just want to be very clear. Even with the added chaos, remember, chaos, crime, and corruption, that's the Trump administration. The added chaos caused by sending in the National Guard and all of what they've done, it's still an incredibly small protest. And is there looting? Yes. Is there vandalism? Yes, in that very limited area. But even with all of that, this is not the crisis that Donald Trump desperately wants it to be. And without his involvement, it wouldn't even be happening right now. Let's just be very clear about that. Now, we do also have to mention that Karen Bass did put a curfew on a section of downtown around this. So have to continue to track what both her and, even regardless of his speech, what Gavin Newsom say and do in the near future, because I worry that, once he starts pulling funding and everything, that they might capitulate, they might kowtow to Donald Trump, but we'll have to see. And bear in mind, Donald Trump's focus is very soon gonna be split. Because as we predicted earlier this week, this is not gonna be just an LA thing. It's already not just an LA thing. There were thousands of protesters marching in Chicago on Tuesday, stopping traffic in the downtown loop, chanting anti-Trump slogans. Marchers waved Mexican flags, held signs denouncing immigration and customs enforcement and President Trump, reading ICE out of Chicago. One mustache away from fascism. Donald Trump would do it if he could grow the facial hair, but I don't think he can. And immigrants make America great, which is totally true, and all that's great. Now, the only thing I would add, and again, this isn't up to me. The people who freak out that there's Mexican flags there, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. This is an immigration focused. You can say protest, you can say social movement or whatever. Since when? Like, there's so many flags that they'd be totally happy. If you're okay with flying Confederate flags, then get all the way off people's backs for flying Mexican flags. That said, I would also I think it's important that we take back the iconography of America. What is happening in LA, the attacks from the Trump regime, deeply un-American. We're gonna get to the stuff about the Confederates, deeply un-American, lauding traitors, lauding those who slaughtered Americans to maintain a fundamentally anti-American way of life. So that said, I think those symbols should be ours. I think the American flag should be ours. You don't have to only hold it or whatever, but I would like to see some of that as well. Bearing in mind that, of course, there's gonna be more media than there are protesters. Why not also have them? So have both. We should claim the red, white, and blue or whatever. And so I think that's the substantive reason. But as I said to my producers earlier today, if that isn't convincing to you, and that won't convince you to actually hold an American flag at one of these protests, I just want you to bear in mind how much it would bother the right if you started to do that. Oh, it would make them so mad. Think about Jesse Waters, how PO'd he's gonna be if there was 100 American flags, just a line of National Guard and Marines decked out like they're about to take on the empire or something. Oh, all troops, all in black. And then it's just protesters with American flags. It would bother them so much. So whether for the substance or for the trolling, let's get some of those out there as well. But again, it's not up to me, and people can protest however they want. That said, before we move on, protests are also beginning in New York and Texas. So look up, if you're interested in participating in one of these, there's a chance, very good chance that you're gonna be able to do that. Greg Abbott wasted no time calling for the National Guard, saying Texas National Guard will be deployed to locations across the state to ensure peace and order. Again, it won't lead to that. It will likely lead to more disorder. Peaceful protest is legal, harming a person or property is illegal, and will lead to arrest. Well, assuming it's not law enforcement that does it, then it's the coolest thing ever. Beat the hell out of them, crack their skulls open. That's not illegal or anything like that. And so look, is he happy to send out the National Guard to crush protests, to silence speech, to crush dissent? 100%. Also though, Greg Abbott might be worried that if he doesn't immediately send out the National Guard, Trump may just seize control of it. So kind of like how the Supreme Court just gives Trump what he wants so he won't defy them. Maybe Greg Abbott is just, prematurely capitulating so that his powers aren't immediately taken away. And really fast, and I know I'm going on here, in terms of what people think about all this, we could bring up this YouGov poll. In terms of deploying National Guard, 38% approve, 45% disapprove. On the Marines, 34% approve, 47% disapprove. Now, is that approved number for both of those too high? Yes, 100%, it's too high. It's insane to do either of those things, but don't get too down about the fact that 1 in 3 Americans think that this is okay. More than 1 in 3 Americans support Donald Trump. If it's only at this level, I take that almost as a win considering all the propaganda and all that. So, and we'll see as this escalates where those numbers go.